Ms. Opedal, will you please call a roll?
Councilmember Brendan Elwood.
Present.
Councilmember Chris Garcia.
Wait for it.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Alan Godhelp.
Here.
Councilmember Trevor Kostinich.
Here.
Councilmember Ross Laumbach. Councilmember Jonathan Rosen.
Here.
Councilmember Martin Volken. All are present with the exception of Councilmember Laumbach and Volken.
Thank you. Would you all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So how about your trim? Yeah?
All right, on tonight's consent agenda, we have the minutes of council meetings of September 18th, 2018, and October 2nd, 2018. We have payroll from October 5th, 2018, checks from October 16th, 2018. Agenda Bill AB 18-121, it's an ordinance amending the North Bend Municipal Code 5.04 regarding model business licensing. Agenda Bill AB 18-122, resolution authorizing the cancellation of outdated checks. Agenda Bill AB 18-123, motion authorizing the blanket purchase orders. Agenda Bill AB 18-124, ordinance amending the North Bend Municipal Code 20.12 regarding currency. Council?
Motion to approve consent agenda as stated.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Godhelp, second by Mr. Elwood. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries and is unanimous. Citizens' comments. This is the time for you, the citizens, come forward. Speak to the council on items that are not on the agenda tonight. Please state your name and address for the record.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am David J. Olson. I live at 440 Main Avenue South, North Bend, Washington. And I got a short report for the Night at Dart Trail show for the first weekend. The Friday, we got something like 250, an audience of 250. The Saturday, we had 450 for the first weekend, and we have two more weekends of Friday and Saturday shows coming up. We'll take a look at the weather forecast for this coming weekend. It looks good. The following weekend, I'm not so sure about, but then that's a couple of weeks, and that the forecast can change in that time. Oh, and okay, yeah, and the change hats. The Kwanzaa Giving Tree will be coming out. Right, I think the weekend of either before Thanksgiving or just after Thanksgiving. I can't remember which. Poor memory on my part. The gift distribution day would be I believe the 13th and the 14th of December. The Words for Service dictionaries have been ordered. They should be here approximately about the end of the month. So all your third graders out there, you should be getting your dictionaries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. Anyone else?
Paula Lodahl, 435 Southeast Maple Drive. I just want to bring up something that Chris brought up at the last meeting, and that was the the weekend backpack program that the food bank is doing. They have a drop-off container up at the Starbucks up on the ridge next to the pizza place, and then out front of their door there's a barrel that you can drop off. And this is a very, very important program for the kids that are home during the weekend that do not have a hot lunch or that they can get at school. And if you drop something off, make sure you mark backpack program so they know that it goes into the backpacks. Thank you.
Just to piggyback on that, I got a message that they're very short right now too, so.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, going right to announcements, presentations, and appointments. I'd like to introduce Mr. Doug Levy. Doug, I saw you come in. Will you come to the podium, please? And remind me what WRPA stands for, the acronym?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. WRPA stands for Washington Recreation and Park Association. So it's representative of all the local parks agencies throughout the state and all those professionals who run parks and rec agencies. So not only cities like yours, but park districts, metropolitan park districts, and the like. So been around for half a century or so. And
Great. Well, on with the presentation. Thank you. Thanks for being here.
well, I want to thank the mayor and council members and Londi and others for being so gracious in welcoming us here tonight. And we're here to honor someone who does you proud in the Washington State Legislature, and that's State Senator Mark Mullet. And the presentation that we have here is for the key legislators who were so instrumental this past session with the state capital budget in allocating a historic amount of money for something called the Aquatic Lands Enhancement Account, or ALEA. And that's an account that your city has taken advantage of, and it provides funding to preserve and enhance waterfront access at all the rivers and waterways throughout the state. And frankly, when the 2017-19 budget process finished, we were kind of disappointed with respect to this ALEA account, because what had happened is when the account was brought forward by Governor Inslee, he had $1 million of dedicated funding for this account, and then he proposed using bonds for about another $3.3 million. And the legislature, if you remember, had a huge glut of school construction projects to deal with their bonds, and so they were not able in the regular 2017-19 capital budget to do anything more than $1 million for this account, and it normally gets on the order of $5 to $6 million. So all of us in local parks and rec said, holy cow, that seems unfair. There are several projects that have gone through a process, they've qualified, they've been ranked and evaluated, they've done their local match. Isn't there some way we can fix this in the 2018 capital budget? And Senator Mullet, Senator David Frocht from the Seattle area, about 6 or 7 other lawmakers were really key in looking at that and saying, you know what, we should fix this and we should get this back to the level of funding that the governor first proposed, which was about $4.3 million. Except Senator Mullet and his colleagues did a lot more than get us back to where the governor was. They made the judgment call and the policy call that there were a whole bunch of projects here that brought a lot of value and benefit to the state of Washington. And so they didn't just do $4.3 million worth of allocations. They did $12.285 million worth of allocations. And instead of 4 or 5 projects, they funded 22 projects on that whole list. And it was their way of saying, you know, we want to do right by all these projects that are so instrumental in enhancing our quality of life around the state. So that's what we're here tonight to honor Senator Mullet for. You know, you have the luxury of having someone who not only intuitively understands local government, but he also happens to be one of the negotiators on the capital budget when it goes into those small rooms where they make the decisions. There's about 8 members who get to decide really some of the key cutoff points on funding and the in or out status of projects, and Senator Mullet is one of those. And so we're here to honor him. We have a plaque. I think we're going to hold off on pictures until Mayor, you get a chance to talk here, and I think we have a Park District Commissioner who wants to say a few words on Senator Mullet's behalf. But for council's purposes, I'll just read the plaque that we've put together for Senator Mullet. It says, "Thank you, Senator Mark Mullet, Capital Budget Backup Negotiator for Senate Democrats, with our thanks and appreciation for your outstanding work in allocating a historic level of capital budget funding for the Aquatic Lands Enhancement Account, ALEA, $12.285 million covering 22 projects around the state." So with that, I hope others will put a few words in, and I think Londy's planning Senator Mullet to bat cleanup here.
Travis or Linda, either one of you want to come to the podium?
I'm Linda Grez, a commissioner for Skyview Metro Parks, and I just want to thank Senator Mullet on behalf of the Skyview Metro Parks constituents. You understand what the community needs, and you are an advocate for it, and that's rare, and I really appreciate that, and thank you on behalf of the Park District.
Thank you. Come on up, Travis. And Senator Mullet, from my point of view, you've been a really good partner for us, and very supportive. And I remember the night that we had our fire, and the next morning you were, Johnny, on the spot coming to visit the apartments, and also the explosion too. So, but you know, overlay money for about $100,000 plus money for Torgerson Park over the years, and recently a Tollgate Farm got money for interior improvements to the tune of $250,000. I just want to thank you and look forward to continued, partnerships and support. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, everyone. I really appreciate the recognition, and it was kind of an interesting, the insider baseball with the ALEA account was, we knew we were in a good spot because the parks folks, to their credit, when we put it on the Senate budget and it went over to the House, they were so excited for it that they really went to bat to keep the entire list funded. And I think the House members, even though they weren't planning on doing the same, realized they had these are the type of people who are so well organized that no one wanted to piss them off. So they said, well, just do the whole list too. And that's how we ended up getting there. And I think it's a testament to, the capital budget ends up being, $2.7 billion budget. And it's really nice when you have these ranked lists who have a well thought out process where they vet all these projects. So it's not like the 22 projects we funded were just grabbed out of thin air. I mean, these projects all went through this long internal vetting process to make the final cut, and it makes it much easier for the legislature to then go through and fund that entire list because someone else has put a lot of work up front, as opposed to just having kind of an arbitrary decision of picking different members' projects of what you're going to do. And it was a really good result for this capital budget, and I plan to be in that same room in 2019 again, and we will go to bat again for the projects in the 5th District. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Could we get a
little
photograph? Yeah.
This has our water slide all over it for 2020.
There.
I mean, it's
Board
right
Member
there.
Linda, could you join them, please?
Londy? No, our water slide. For the water conveyance to the pond of the river.
You'll get a water slide, don't worry about it.
Right, we could pay for it with this money.
right.
It's a,
It even has the word aquatic in the label, right? Aquatics.
You get a water.
Tom hasn't heard about our water slide yet, has he?
What's that?
Brendan and I want a water slide as the conveyance system for the water from the pond to the river for mitigation water.
Let's talk about
Double
that.
duty.
We could charge people for sliding down from the pond to the river to pump the mitigation water in.
Pushing the water down.
Well, we have to have a conveyance system.
Okay, commission and committee reports. Planning Commission, Parks Commission, and EDC. Mr. Miller?
Yes, Your Honor and Council. The Parks Commission has been busy. They met jointly with the Planning Commission on September 27th for a public hearing and joint deliberation on amendments to the 20-year Parks Capital Facilities Program, which we saw at CED today, and a 6-year Parks Capital Facilities Plan and the Parks element of the comprehensive plan. The Parks Commission and Planning Commission both made a recommendation of approval on these amendments following the public hearing. In addition to this, the Planning Commission reviewed and recommended the elements, and they proposed amendments to the critical area regulations, which we also saw at CED today. They will provide a recommendation of approval on October 13th, and they will also begin review of amendments to the floodplain management regulations, and that will be done and hopefully on to a hearing on October 25th.
Thank you. And do you have EDC report?
Well, actually, I don't have an EDC report, but most of the things that we had are on your agenda tonight, or a lot of them are. But at the CED meeting, though, we went over several things. I don't have an EDC report for you this evening.
Okay, no worries. Community and Economic Development Committee, Mr. Kosinich.
We had a very long meeting today. I thought maybe Dave Miller was going to go ahead and tick a few of them off right there in that transition. But we were introduced to the critical area amendments introduction, and we'll see a lot more on that in the next couple months. We also reviewed an open space and trail standards memo, looked at our parks capital facilities plan, took another look at the bike and ped mitigation study that we all saw from Farron Piers. We also discussed a developer extension agreement that is on our agenda later this evening. Got to look at a new request from the River Run development as far as trying to preserve some more trees. So we'll see a follow-up from them before it comes to council. Had a great MOU introduction for the Snow Valley Innovation Center that is in line with our incentive to encourage more commercial development here. And then also just were introduced to the potential for a twin sister or a professional and cultural exchange with Mastia in the Republic of Georgia. Our next meeting is the third Tuesday of November at CED at 4 p.m.
Thank you. Finance and Administration, Councilmember Rosen.
Thank you, Your Honor. Let's see, we met October 2nd at 4 o'clock at City Hall. Several items on our agenda. We talked about B&O tax ordinance, local business expansion, the sale of the old City Hall, which hopefully we'll be able to maximize our return on that and put that towards the new City Hall, blanket purchase orders, and believe it or not, we have spent a considerable amount of time talking about how to cancel a $1 check. So folks, in the future, if you want to help your city, please cash your checks. We have spent more time and money and paper on a $1 check than you would ever want to imagine. That is all, Your Honor.
Thank you. Transportation and Public Works, Councilmember Garcia.
Your Honor, the Get It Done Committee has not met. We will meet on October 23rd at 4 p.m. We've changed our meeting time. In the meantime, we've been busily working through email to get some of the items proposed on tonight's agenda, in particular number 10 and number 11. And I think I'd like to volunteer our services on the Transportation Committee to be the delegation that goes to Georgia to seal the deal, because we are the Get It Done Committee.
Yeah, I'll have to go with you, though.
Yeah.
I'll have to go with you.
Over there.
Okay. Public Health and Safety, Mr. Gotthealth?
Yes, so we did not meet. Our meeting was Tuesday, October 9th, was canceled, so public safety did not meet.
Just keep the floor and move right into...
Keep going. Well,
Mayor Pro Tem.
Mayor Pro Tem, okay. So we had a work study on September 25th at City Hall, where we had basically an executive session to discuss performance of a public employee. We also had a meeting on September 25th where we talked about the bike and pedestrian mitigation fee program. We reviewed the North Bend Economic Profile and Retail Leakage Study. We just talked about stimulating commercial development and had a discussion about plastic bags. We also met on Tuesday, October 9th at City Hall. There we reviewed the 2019 proposed budgets and reviewed the Human Service and Community Organization grant funds and approved those, or recommended those, discussed our decision cards, and that was it. From there I will move ahead.
Eastside Fire and Rescue.
Eastside Fire and Rescue. Eastside Fire and Rescue, another Get It Done committee, met on October 11th, 2018.
Congratulations for meeting.
What?
Congratulations for meeting. That's a good step towards a Get It Done committee. I was a little confused over here.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to confuse
We
you.
extended the date out so we could take on more agenda items.
More
okay, that's it.
credibility in what you're saying right now.
So anyways,
It's $1 for trademark infringement, by the way,
That's right.
for each of us.
okay. We do work committee, is that better? Fire chief briefing, we talked about PFAS, and we should be getting some reporting for that. The beginning of January, had a conversation, beginning with Mr. Mullet to talk about some funding to be able to get that cleaned up and getting that in the DOE. The Falls City, merger with District 10 is moving forward. It looks like we will have nobody fighting the boundary review, so there are no appeals. So it looks like we will get approval from the boundary review by the end of the week and hope to have this on the ballot for February. So stay tuned for that. We also discussed the North Bend partnerships that Londi has proposed. One is basically we're looking at some point to relocate quarters. One of the opportunities is possibly relocated out here. There was a site that we were looking at in Issaquah, not sure that's gonna happen. And some other real good partnerships that I'm not sure we're ready to discuss out here with Eastside Fire and Rescue, which I'm excited for. We also approved an agenda bill for moving the HRA, instead of internally doing that and costing us money. We have a third party that's going to handle the HRAs for the unions. That's called a VIVA HRA, and that will save us money by having somebody else manage those accounts. We had a milestone too. We approved our first biennium budget. So we approved a budget for 2019 and 2020. Just to highlight those budgets, originally when we started, we were looking for an increase of 4.29% for 2019 and 2020 2.5%. We agreed on a 3.63% increase in the budget, or our contributions, and a 2.48% increase for 2020. In those bills, we also approved a new budget management and reserve policy. We approved a new minimum staffing policy, and we approved some changes to the equipment replacement fund, some of which was some great input from Londi too on those. We also at the same time approved a smoothing amount, so that because this is a year we would get hit with the new ILA that we negotiated about 3-4 years ago, our costs would have been more expensive. So what we've done is spread those increased costs over the next 3 years in order to maintain our budget at a certain level. So I want to thank our members there that agreed to that smoothing, and it helps out both North Bend and Issaquah. And our next meeting will be on October 24th, 1:30 in Issaquah.
Thank you. Okay, introductions. Number 9, AB 18-125. It's a public hearing on an ordinance amending the North Bend Municipal Code 18.18 regarding landscaping regulations. Mr. Miller.
Yes, Your Honor, and council members, this was kind of a long overdue update. There are a number of things in this that I was very happy to see come out of it. Not only did we look at things like buffers, and there were some reductions in buffers in the industrial areas, but there was quite a bit of language in this with regard to removing invasive species. So if you're going to landscape, or if you're turning in a landscape plan, there's quite a bit in here to try to get those plant materials out that we don't want to have. There were some other regulations in here that dealt with increasing some of the size of some of the things we plant so that they'd have more chance of success. A fairly large section on putting amendments in. A lot of what we've been planting hasn't been planted in soils that will work real well. So putting the amendments in should increase our landscaping. We listened to the council on the concern about buffers, so there's a lot more specificity, and when you plant in a buffer, how many plants you have to put in. We took the maintenance period from 2 years to 3 years, and there are various other improvements to the landscaping standards, which I think the council will be happy with. It should show itself in the kind of planning that we have around town. We also updated the street tree list, and rather than putting that in an ordinance, we're keeping that a little more flexible, so as we find that climate changes or we have certain changes we need to make, we can do that much more easily than going through an ordinance revision.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Miller before I open the public hearing? Seeing none, open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to testify, please come forward. Going once, going twice, close the public hearing and call on Mr. Kostinich.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to approve AB 18-125, an ordinance amending North Bend Municipal Code, Chapter 18-18, landscaping regulations as a first and final reading.
Second. Motion by Mr. Kostinich, second by Mr. Rosen. Mr. Kostinich, will you speak to it?
Yeah, I think Mr. Miller did a fantastic job of summarizing it. It was one of these ordinances that has been through a whole bunch of staff time and has come to CED multiple times, and I think it really speaks to just especially what our citizens are asking for, not only longevity in species, but also just an increased buffer for our main streets and especially along some of these newer subdivisions. So I commend the staff for their efforts and look forward to it passing this evening.
Great, thank you. Discussion? Mr. Garcia?
Yep, I got a couple things. I guess page 5 or 43, in the city center, it's 18.050. In the city center, where existing structures and smaller lots limit available land area, development of plazas, streetscapes, elements, and other amenities shall be allowed in lieu of minimum standards set forth. And if we're trying to develop our downtown and these are small lots and probably have zero lot line, is that something that we should just not be charging at all? I mean, if we're trying to, and if we're trying to encourage development in our downtown, that's just one more fee that's going to be on top of that.
Policy call.
Policy call. Page 8. So I understand that we want to plant fuller, bigger plants. But I guess the concern again is that we have a 3-year maintenance bond that's 20% of the cost of the landscaping. If we're going to be having people put in better, more expensive plants, and then potentially having to do a lot of soil work, those bonds become pretty big. And then now we're going from 2 years to 3 years. I kind of feel like that's almost double dipping. We're saying we want a performance bond on your landscaping, and then now we're going to turn around and place requirements that cost more to plant better landscaping. I almost feel like that's a little bit of a double dip there.
Might clarify that the more successful the plant material is, the less likely it is that you'll have to use the bond. And we're trying to react to people's comments on how landscaping looks. Particularly, the majority of the comments we've gotten are on some of the newer subdivisions.
Yeah.
Where things haven't survived, and it's very difficult to call a bond. It's very difficult to go through that process. So what we're trying to do is to ensure that the plant material looks good, stays healthy, and people don't need to use their bond.
And I don't disagree with that, but we're also in the same motion taking the bond that we're saying plant better stuff so it has a better success rate, and now we're keeping it for 3 years instead of 2 years. So that's kind of I kind of feel like it's a double, if we're saying plant better stuff, have a better success, do more soil work, and this is going to cost more, and in return, we're now going to keep your money for an extra year. So that's kind of where personally I have a little bit of issue. I think on the page 52 or page 14, section E, it says if there are multiple entrances off collectors and arterials, required buffer area may be split among the entrances, but priority shall be given to buffering the higher classification street. Is that, so I guess clarifying question is, could somebody just put the one buffer on the one street? Or should this say the buffer shall be split amongst the streets so that there's a buffer on all the streets involved?
Yeah, I think the idea is it may be split among the entrances, but priority is giving to the street that has the most traffic. The reason we say it may be split, when we put regulations together that are so prescriptive that we're looking at distances and percentages, it doesn't match the topography or the design of the subdivision. So you have to use some discretion as to how you're gonna buffer. We hear from the council pretty clearly what you want to see along these roadways, but one size doesn't always fit all, and you want to do it so that it's effective.
Yeah, I guess my question is, if they entered in off of two streets, could somebody just buffer one section?
No, you'd have to do both.
You'd have to do both.
You'd have to do both.
So, okay, so I'm just reading that wrong, that says if there's multiple, it really is if
It
there's
just says
multiple.
priority is given, and which means if you have a more dramatic entrance on a major street, you'd give that more landscaping than you would on a secondary entrance.
Okay, but both entrances would have to
Both
be
would be.
landscaped. Okay, and then, my other question is, I'm going backwards, on page 13, 20 houses, 20 lots. Is that too big? Should that number be smaller?
You're talking about landscape entry area buffer?
Yes,
having
sir,
a-
I'm sorry, I should have clarified that.
Yeah,
since you can't see what I have circled.
We're trying to look at the impact that you're gonna have on taking land away for the buffer and how that affects the economics of the development. And we thought that was a reasonable size for, a major entry feature.
Well, and I recall the discussion at CED, there was a fairly lengthy discussion about, and we went back and forth about the available land that's available and what we thought as far as the size of the developments, and did it make sense to have an entry feature in a 4 or 5 unit development? And the discussion was that the 3 council members at CED didn't think that made sense to have that big buffer with potential signage and that type of
I
scenario.
recall that.
But 20 is a 5-acre development, right?
Approximately, yeah.
So
And-
I guess my question would be, would 12 houses be an appropriate number? I mean, I don't think it's 2 or 3 or 5, but I mean, I don't know. I guess if we ended up with a slew of 3 or 4 acre parcels in a row, 5 acre parcels in a row, then you could potentially have a strip of unlandscaped area.
We really didn't discuss, cutting it a lot finer than that. Again, that's a judgment call.
Okay. And these are just questions, I'm not, that's really all that I had.
Yeah, I think to speak a little bit on that, Chris, just by our current code with how much you need to landscape by area, once it goes less than 20 homes, it doesn't end up to be much of a healthy part for long-term, like contiguous forest, if you will, like what we wanted. When you get up to 20 homes, you actually have some real coniferous feel there.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit more of an aesthetic rather than, okay, this is just gonna build and take 6 trees here. It's-
Part of the concern is most of these are taken care of by HOAs. If your HOA isn't large enough, you tend to get things not taken care of. And we've seen that in some of the LID drainage facilities that haven't been maintained properly, so.
Okay.
Anyone else? Nope, okay. The motion before you is to approve AB 18-125, an ordinance amending North Bend Municipal Code, Chapter 18.18, landscaping regulations as a first and final reading. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed?
Nay?
Okay, motion carries 4-1. Mr. Garcia is dissenting. Number 10, AB 18-126, ordinance amending the floodplain management plan. Mr. Moore.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The attached agenda bill discusses the 2018 updates to the floodplain management plan, which is a requirement of CRS, which provides the flood insurance premium discounts to the citizens of North Bend. Gray and Osborne was hired to amend our previous flood plan management update in 2012, taking into consideration the 2016 CRS audit. This revised plan was submitted to Planning Commission for processing. Public hearings were held on July 12th and August 9th, 2018, and the attached version is the resulting document being recommended by Planning Commission for adoption. There were no public comments at any of the at either of the two hearings. A majority of the amendments are statistical updates to the plan, and then amending and eliminating some of the older recommendations that we've already achieved, and providing some discussion about repetitive loss properties within the city. With that, like as mentioned, it's statistical and updates for the most part. The plan's pretty big. It's not included in the packet. I think Susie provided it in a link for council to review. I believe there's a hard copy as well. But with that, staff recommends approval of the 2018 amendments to the floodplain management plan.
Any questions for Mr. Moore? Any members of the public wish to comment before we continue? Seeing none, Mr. Garcia?
Yes, Your Honor, I'd like to make a motion to approve AB 18-126, an ordinance adopting the 2018 amendments to the floodplain management plan as a first and final reading.
Second. A motion by Mr. Garcia, second by Mr. Elwood. Mr. Garcia, will you speak to it?
I just, I'm still a firm believer that we need to address this map as a whole. I think we've added, a long time ago when we accepted this map, we added a lot of people into the community rating system, and we do these regulations to achieve this discount for a lot of people that shouldn't be paying it. And it drives up the cost of new projects. I'm going to vote for this tonight because it is just a statistical update, but I think that I don't remember if you remember how many people we added in to the floodplain.
I don't remember, but it was almost double.
Almost double, and I just, there's a lot of people that didn't agree with that map, but, so I guess that's my soapbox on this. I really feel like we need to buck up and spend the money, because while we're saving people money with this community rating system, we have a lot of people that should not be paying flood insurance.
Thank you. Discussion. Okay, the motion before you is to approve AB 18-126, an ordinance adopting the 2018 amendments to the floodplain management plan as a first and final reading. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries, it is unanimous. Number 11, AB 18-127, it's a resolution awarding the 2018 wastewater treatment plant critical improvements project to Prospect Construction. Mr. DeBerg.
Thank you, Your Honor and Council. On August 21st, 2018, the City Council rejected bids for the wastewater treatment plant high priority improvements project due to lack of sufficient funding, and on the same night awarded a design contract and construction management contract to Gray and Osborne Inc. for the 2018 critical improvements project. The design was completed and the project was advertised via the MRSC Small Works roster on September 25th, 2018. Bids were received on October 10th at 11 a.m. with 2 bids being received. Those are both shown in the agenda bill. Prospect Construction submitted the low bid in the amount of $241,869.08. The engineer's estimate for the project was $195,130. And one thing that I inadvertently left out of this agenda bill, but is very important, is that the budget for construction was set at $353,000. So the bid does come in well within budget, even though it's higher than the engineer's estimate. Prospect, we've spoken with them. They're very confident in their bid. They're very comfortable with it. And we've done the appropriate background checks on them, and all of our background checks came back with glowing reviews on Prospect. So at this point, we are recommending awarding this project.
Great. Any questions for Mr. DeBerg? Any member of the public wish to comment before we go? I'm sorry.
All right, yeah, I've got a quick question. Can you just repeat the Well, you said as far as the estimated budget was 350, and where did that come from versus the engineer's estimate?
So the budget was set prior to the engineer's estimate being
So
finalized. It
internal
was-
budget that we had put together.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Do we know what the difference, why there was a big difference between, or a $50,000 difference between engineer's estimate and what we've got?
Speaking with the engineers, they're fairly confident that the largest thing is just lost economies of scale. They base their engineer's estimate largely on the bids that were received for the high priority improvements project, and they didn't account for that lost economy of scale. So they're pretty confident that that's what the discrepancy was.
Mr. Regos, you came in under budget the last couple projects. This one kind of negates it. You're back to zero.
Low blow.
So those cancel out to make it even?
That did.
Okay.
Any member of the public wish to comment before we continue? Seeing none, this didn't go to committee, but it would have gone to your committee.
Your Honor, I'd like to make a motion to approve AB 18-127, a resolution accepting bids and awarding contracts for the wastewater treatment plant 2018 critical improvements project to Prospect Construction, Inc.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Garcia, second by Mr. Elwood. Mr. Garcia, will you speak to it?
I think the key word here is critical.
Yep.
That's it.
Improvements.
Yeah.
Okay, discussion. Okay, the motion before you is to approve AB 18-127, a resolution accepting bids and awarding contract for the wastewater treatment plant 2018 critical improvements project to Prospect Construction, Inc. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries as unanimous. Number 12, AB 18-128, resolution authorizing the development, Mr. Garcia?
Your Honor, I'm going to recuse myself from this.
Thank you.
Do I need to leave or can I just go sit down?
Resolution authorizing the DEA with 101 West Park LLC. Mr. Regos.
Thank you, Mayor, Ken, and council. Page 119 in your packet. This commercial project is located at Park Street and Main Avenue. It's at the southwest corner where there's a car wash and the Huckstadter coffee shop there. So this is a typical housekeeping developer extension agreement where there will be sidewalk improvements, water improvements, sewer line improvements, drainage improvements. But a couple highlights of this particular project I'd just like to share is one of them. It will bring a lot of vitality to that intersection at Park Street and Main Avenue. The project is for, my understanding, is a coffee shop and a pizza eatery, and so that will add some excitement to that corner. And secondly, the project adds about 15 to 20 new public parking stalls. So we hear from our residents and council that we want more downtown parking, and this is right downtown. So we've reviewed the preliminary engineering at this point. The project's going to start construction very soon, and we'd like to get this developer extension agreement signed.
Great, thank you. Any questions from Mr. Regos?
Like commented, I think it's just a coffee shop. It's not
There would be a restaurant too.
it'll be a restaurant too? Okay. I was under the impression it wasn't. I've got some shaking the head back there. I thought it was just a coffee shop.
Anyone else?
I'll ask a question. I don't know if it's public knowledge, and if it's not, you'll tell me. Page 6 of 45, you talk about the stormwater extension. And reading that, it seems very expensive. How expensive was it, and is that public knowledge? If not,
Yeah, I'll be happy to speak to that. Storm drainage for any land development project is always the most expensive, and of any component, it's more expensive than water or sewer because it combines storm drainage collection, conveyance systems, either infiltration or detention, and water quality treatment. And because it's downtown and there's not a lot of available land, it has to be built underground, so there's excavation associated with it, a lot of pipes, a lot of connections. There was special technology that was used for this particular facility. One of the reasons that they did that is actually to save costs, because if they excavate down for a typical storm drainage underground detention vault, there's a lot of concrete, a lot of rebar involved, you're digging deeper, and a lot of dewatering that's associated with that. We have a really high groundwater table. So I'm not the engineer on this particular project, as you know, but what I saw in the preliminary plans was it looks like it was pretty well value engineered, and I heard it was on the order of a couple $100,000 for the storm drainage facility for a less than 1 acre project.
Okay, because the reason I asked that is we have to look at this if we want to, we talk about business friendly, if we want to attract commercial development, these are the sort of fees that are just astronomical. So in the future, hopefully we'll look at these things, and that it happened to be in here, so it was a perfect segue to that, and we'll leave it at that.
It's the King County Surface Water
I
Design
understand.
Manual of 2009, so it's expensive to build, unfortunately.
But to Councilmember Rosen's point, other jurisdictions like Mercer Island, for example, they actually did a lot of the infrastructure and made it plug and play, so when the development community came in, that infrastructure was in place. So that's a policy decision for the city to make.
Any member of the public wish to comment before we continue?
Trevor had something.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I just, it's exciting to hear that there's gonna be additional parking, so I just wanted to better understand that. Like, whether, I've heard numbers like 8 additional spots for us, and I've heard 15. I guess, first of all, was this just a suggestion from the applicant, or is this part of some mitigation that got to this DEA? So
I think maybe Dave can speak to this, but my understanding was it was kind of at the pre-application stage about a year ago or so where this was talked about.
It was really kind of a good partnership between public and private, because we needed additional frontage to put in the left turn lane that went in on Park Street, and that took more of the frontage off of the property. So in order to provide more property to get a buildable lot, we negotiated for additional public parking to be put onto the project. So you have a combination. It met the needs of the development, and the net overage, depending upon what uses are in it, but from the uses we've been told, we have 8 spaces for public parking there right now if we allocate what the private parties need. Those spaces will be maintained by the business and the property owner over the life of the project. And they need a little more room to put this complicated underground drainage system in, so it worked for everybody's interest.
So, thank you. So are there 8 additional spots that are all in a lot that might appear like a private lot, but we know there's 8
We're going to
spots? Are
sign
those
them.
8 spots somehow?
We're gonna sign them as public parking, and we'll probably at least put signs along the end of the stalls. We may stencil them as well, and have some directional signage at the entrance indicating there's public parking.
Cool, thank you.
Okay, any member of the public wish to comment before we continue? Seeing none, Mr. Kostenich.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll make a motion to approve AB 18-128, a resolution authorizing a developer extension agreement with 101 West Park LLC for the North Bend Park and Main commercial project.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Kostenich, second by Mr. Gothoff. Mr. Kostenich, will you speak to it?
Thanks for, a lot of these are pretty standard. I appreciate the extra detail, especially in regards to stormwater that not only is hard by King County surface water design standards, but it's also hard in our city with a pretty high groundwater table. And it's also good to hear about the added benefit of public parking. So thanks for that, and look forward to this passing and hopefully getting through design and into implementation within the next few years.
Discussion. Anyone? Nope. Okay, motion before you is to approve AB 18-128, a resolution authorizing the developer extension agreement with 101 West Park LLC for the North Bend Park and Main commercial project. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Mr. Garcia, will you rejoin us, please? Number 13. AB 18-129, resolution setting the public hearing date for alley vacation. Mr. Rigos.
Thank you, Mayor, Ken, Council, page 171 in your packet. When I first heard about this alley, I had no idea where it was, so I had to go visit it. It's out there between Cedar Avenue and Stowe Avenue, and I went out there and couldn't find it because there's a building in the alley. So the alley is 16 feet wide and about 150 feet long. So I said, well, the public isn't really using this alley. Did some research, found out that the building was built back in 1986 or 87, a long time ago. There doesn't appear to be any public utilities in this alley corridor. that's 16 feet wide by 150 feet long. There's been a request to vacate that particular alley for a property closing, and the agenda bill is fairly straightforward. There's a vicinity map in the exhibits on page last page in your packet, 178, that shows where that corridor is. So I think that if we were to do an appraisal of that alley, that would probably actually cost more of that several $1,000s than the land is worth. So I think we move forward with the public hearing.
Ms. Lindell, can you cite to the council what the steps are for an alley vacation?
So that's procedure set forth in state law, and first you need to set the public hearing date, which is what you are doing this evening. And I believe that we decided, is the public hearing set in the
I think it's
resolution?
November 20th.
November 20th.
So we actually will have a public hearing on November 20th, and given that this is a pretty simple procedure, you'd probably ask yourself, why can't we simply do it tonight? And it really is a procedure set forth in state law, so that's why we're doing this two-part procedure. There's an opportunity for folks to come and comment. Oftentimes, these are much more complicated, and there's many interests about who wants to acquire the alley, and sometimes you divide them, and there's a question about fair market value. None of that is really relevant because there's a building on top of the alley, so it's not as though much of the alley. And as Mark indicated, normally you would get a separate appraisal to determine the fair market value of the alley, but the cost of the appraisal, we think, would likely exceed the fair market value of the dirt of the alley, so we're not recommending that you proceed with that. The other factor is the purchaser is actually the senior center, and the property they're acquiring is for affordable housing for the seniors, so we actually are hoping to facilitate this. There is a public purpose. You always worry about gift of public funds, but there is an exception to that for the, as our Constitution says, the quote, poor and infirm. And so when we're doing something to help affordable housing, it is consistent with that constitutional exception. So.
Thank you. Question?
Yeah, I have a question, yeah. Thanks, Londi, and thanks, Mark. I guess, love the intent, love the purpose of where we hope this is going for more senior housing. Question I had was, like, the developer who first built this building, was there just an admin miss that they went ahead and threw their property on public land?
I think so, yeah, 1985, whoever the building official was at that time
Shouldn't have happened.
probably missed it.
It probably wasn't being used as an alley, so it looked
Yeah.
like the rest of the green space, so.
Yeah. No, I think it's all headed the right direction. Thank you.
Yep.
So is the senior center in the process of purchasing this property? Is that what I'm understanding here?
That's what I'm understanding.
Would you like to hear
Okay.
from the senior center?
No, I just need that clarified.
The director is here.
My only question is if somehow this fails, which we hope it doesn't, and they're able to acquire it, and this becomes a private entity that's actually gonna sell it for market rate, they enjoy the benefit of this, is what I understand. Is that correct?
Yes, they will. I mean, the mayor had the same concern. You can't take back your vacation. Again, it's set by state law. So there's no, I mean, you could put a restrictive covenant that you could record, if you were concerned about getting your, whatever the fair market value is, you could record a restrictive covenant against the property as a condition of the vacation that says, in the event this is no longer owned by a nonprofit operating some type of affordable senior housing, then whoever comes into ownership, that this constitutes a lien where they're obligated to pay for an appraisal and also determine fair market value of this alley and then pay the city the fair market value to kind of do a workaround the vacation. We'll spend more on attorneys trying to come up with that restricted covenant, but you could in fact do that. That would kind of be a workaround. I don't know that it's worth it because I think the fair market value of that alley is going to be, maybe less than $5,000, if that. I don't even, because you can't really value anything that's on, the building sits on, right? And you can't build on the portion on either side of the building. So it's not like you can sell off any portion of that alley. The mistake was made in the 80s and made it pretty valueless.
Could we rent it?
Anything we can do to make sure that it stays as senior housing and affordable, which is, I think, what this
Yeah.
council direction would like to see. I'd like to see done, anything that we can do to make sure that if it's a private, that it doesn't enjoy that
Sure.
is a concern to me.
We can certainly, the public hearings come on the 20th, and we can certainly make that, we could record a restrictive covenant as part of the vacation.
Let's kick it around a bit.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
for now, any member of the public wish to comment before we continue, please? Mr. Olson?
Hello, I'm David Olson at 440 Main Avenue South, and I live in the building in question, and well, the contents of that alley is two units and 2 storerooms. The units are the ones that are facing the main avenue. The storerooms are facing the that plaza of yard. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Olson.
Good evening. I'm Susan Kingsbury Como, Executive Director of Mount Si Senior Center, located here at 411 Main Avenue South. Mark, thank you so much for working with our consultant and previously working with me. As you stated, the alley has served no purpose to date as there's a building on it. And Londi, to your point, affordable housing is an asset for this community. If the alley remains in place, it will present an obstacle to the acquisition of the property and to take full advantage of all the USDA funds available for acquisition. We need to move quickly in delivering the whole package, birthing the baby all at once. And that needs to happen in our application to the USDA. Just to give you an update, it looks like we will be submitting at least a partial application by year end because the USDA has been very supportive of this acquisition, so much so that they have spent countless hours working with our consultant and working with us in reviewing what we're going through step by step so that we are successful in our application. There will be considerable work that needs to be done on that property, and we will probably seek competitive grants to upgrade that property to extend the economic life and the useful life of the building. But delivering the alley as part of the package is the thing that we need to do so that we don't sort of trip ourselves up in the application process. Anyway, so that's the update. It's very exciting, and tenants are happy, and we've had our first walkthrough, and things are moving forward quickly.
Mr. Rosen?
Up there.
Sure.
Can you enlighten us a little bit about this project? How many units of housing are you looking at and so forth?
Yeah. So there's 28 units there, 27 single occupancy units, and then a manager's unit that's 2-bedroom unit. Everyone who's in that property currently lives at or earns at below 50% of the area median, making them eligible. It is our plan to convert all the properties or all the units into affordable USDA subsidized housing. So that will allow us to actually provide affordable housing, and for things not to go at market rate. Currently, the rent, I think the top end of the rent is like $821 is what it's set for the HAB contract, and I think that the whatever, I can't think of the guy's, the word for the guy that comes and says, this is the value of the property.
Appraiser.
I think, yes, that's the word. I was thinking assessor. I think the value of the property is just shy of $1,200 per unit. So if it converts to market rate, that it's going to be lost. If we lose that property, it's lost. We're the only people in line. The USDA, no one else has come forward, so we're sort of the one and only hope. What's great, King County is actually being really supportive and has come for look-see on the place and is considering our needs as they develop their RFP for funding next year. So that's really good. We have strong partners with King County Housing Authority. They've made a loan of $50,000 to help us through the technical process, but there are no other pre-development funds. So if we were to pay on, the appraisal, that would come out of all of our money to actually pay people to help us get those applications into the USDA. So we really haven't got the funds. We've got a pro bono lawyer. We got the deputy director of King County Housing Authority, who's like our little angel sitting on our shoulders. And everyone else is honestly, the amount of money that we'll put out, everyone's going to get paid at the tail end. Jim Bronner's a local guy who does affordable housing. He's getting paid on the tail end, but he's got like four people on his team on this doing financial modeling. So
Will it be affordable housing for seniors only, or?
seniors only. So that's what it was developed under. But right now the USDA is saying that we can assume the underlying 515 loan, and that they will also make us another loan at 1% interest. For the remaining acquisition costs. They want us to own it. They want us to own it next year. What we have to figure out is how we're going to get we reckon it's probably $1 million to $2 million in rehab funds. And we'll be going through competitive processes, and we're hoping to prioritize and get the USDA to buy off on saying you got to do 1 through 5 and 10 through 15, or 6 through 15 or later, as we're able to get funds. So I mean, the USDA is willing to pony up almost all the acquisition funds. We just got to kind of figure out the whole package, and they want us to become owners next year, not 2020. So there's considerable support for it.
It's wonderful news, Susan. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Thank you.
You guys are great.
Excellent.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Mr. Garcia, questions, or you want?
Well, I was going to question on this date, is this a firm date because of legal notice?
Yes.
We'll move this up.
The statute requires,
20 days, I think.
I think it is 20 days.
It is
I'd
60
have to pull up the RCW, but there is a time period from when council sets a hearing date to when you can have the hearing. So I don't think we could do the first, I don't think we can do the first meeting in November.
November 6th,
There'd be
so-
minimum noticing issues for the public hearing, so.
Yeah, I don't think, we talked to Susan, I don't think the November 20th date is a problem for the actual vacation for them. I think it works, so.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just if they had to pay for either the alley or the appraisal, it'd be a problem.
Yeah. Okay, Mr. Garcia?
Yep. Make a motion to approve AB 18-129, a resolution initiating vacation process for a portion of a public alley located near Cedar Avenue and setting a public hearing date of November 20th, 2018.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Garcia. I'm going to give this one to Mr. Gothelf. Second to Mr. Gothelf. Mr. Garcia, speak to it.
I love street vacations, so I'm all for this.
I like vacations, period.
I was going to say you have experience. I was going to say that earlier. I thought I
Have to say it, just
out
you
there.
can just let
Just
that
out there.
fly under the radar.
Discussion.
I think it's important. I just want to make sure that we do whatever's right to help them get there, and that we're not helping any private investor to get in there and get the property. So that was my only concern.
We're fast tracking as best we can.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Okay, the motion before you is to approve AB 18-129, a resolution initiating vacation process for a portion of a public alley located near Cedar Avenue and setting a public hearing date of November 20th, 2018. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries and is unanimous. Mayor, council, and administrator concerns and initiative. Mr. Kosinich.
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
Mr. Garcia.
Yes, Your Honor, just continue to beat the drum of if you can help with the backpacks for the kids. That'd be awesome. I will be making another donation this week myself. Homecoming at Mount Si is this Friday. Think that the Wildcats are 6-0, 7-0.
They're undefeated. They're number 2 in the state.
Number 2 in the state, yeah. And then we don't have another meeting before Halloween. Is that correct?
Yep.
So just please be safe. Lots of kids out trick-or-treating. Drive slow.
Great, thanks. Mr. Rosen?
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
Mr. Elwood?
Yes, Valley Center Stage has a production of Sherlock Holmes production. Baker Street Irregulars, please come out and check it out. It's primarily a kids show and it's really entertaining. Thank you.
Mr. Gothelf?
Yeah, just piggyback on Council Member Garcia's comments about Halloween. I know within our neighborhood, we get a lot of people that do decide that they're gonna drive along with their kids in an area where it's kind of tight. So I ask that people watch and be careful, because it's a disaster waiting to happen of a kid getting hit from people coming through there driving to follow their kids and not watching where they're going and kids starting out. So please be careful in that area.
Thank you. Ms. Lindell?
Oh, I just wanted to thank Susan for coming out tonight, and actually, we're very excited about the affordable housing that you'll be confirming for our community, and I want to thank Mark for assisting with the vacation and making that a reality. I know, Mayor Ken, you're going to mention a grant that Lynn and you worked on together for CDBG, but I just want to thank you for your efforts. I am recalling when I first got here, we hadn't received any CDBG funds for almost 20 years, and that sitting on these regional committees, it does count. Mayor Ken signed up for the dreaded JRC committee about 4 years ago, and we asked him because we knew that 6 years ago, and it's a distasteful committee, and it's at a horrible hour. I'm not going to lie, but we knew there was some money there, and we wanted it, and he went and he brought home, I think it was almost $300,000 for that one sidewalk project, and then this other, he'll tell you about it, but some dough to do some improvements on Park Street. So I appreciate it. And then the other thing is, thanks, Council, for your good work at the budget workshop. It is going to be a challenging biennial budget with some pretty significant increases in public safety and a softening economy. This is the first time we're really going to have to, and we're seeing some problems in 2020, because when we're seeing our revenues not increase that significantly, and a 9% increase in potentially 9% in public safety, it's just not sustainable. So we're going to have to get more creative, folks, and I know I have confidence that we'll figure it out, but it's a little different this year. So, but thank you for your efforts during the budget workshop. That's it.
Thank you.
Your Honor, I
Yep,
forgot
Mr.
one
Elwood.
thing. I just wanted to say, I think Lynn coordinated the SIP suds and SI.
Yes, yeah.
I just wanted to give a call out. I've been getting a lot of really good feedback on that, and the best feedback was from the number one critic I know, which is my wife, and she thought it was one of the best coordinated events, and she really had a great time and really appreciated the businesses opening up, and it was a home run. So we had other people that we talked to and paraded around. I met a lot of neat people from Issaquah and other places, so just like to give a shout out to Lynn and all those who coordinated it. It's a very effective event.
Well, that was our downtown association. Lynn and Bree assisted, but it was really our volunteers and our business owners for the downtown association.
Well, thank you to all of them for a great event. Thank you.
And I had that on my list too. It was really interesting to find out, I found out yesterday, that they had 450 people show up for their first event like that. As a matter of fact, they had bought glasses for two events, for one now and one in the spring, and they had to dip into the spring glasses to take care of the current, this weekend's event. So next event will be sometime in March, I understand, so it should be good times. Town hall meeting on water rights this Thursday at 6:30 right here. Council, the dais will be set up for you folks to sit. The public would love to have you sit here and listen to them when they come and ask their questions, so Thursday night. Last yard waste recycling event of the year will be held this Saturday, October 20th from 8 a.m. to noon. There's a one-day road closure, a small portion of Southeast Orchard Drive near North Bend Way. That's on October 26th from 7 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. to allow for repaving of a certain section of the sidewalk, I believe. Annual Trick or Treat Street will be held. This is the second annual, and last year's was phenomenal too. Held this on Tuesday, October 31st. That's on Halloween, from 4 to 6 p.m. in the downtown North Bend. Everyone is invited to dress up in costume, adults and children alike, and visit participating downtown merchants for Halloween candy and enjoy live music, another Downtown Foundation event. So, Arbor Day tree planting event will be held Friday, November 2nd, starting at 3 p.m. at Torgerson Park. Bring your gloves and shovels and join me and our local garden club in planting trees to help beautify Torgerson Park. And North Bend was fortunate to get this community development block grant funding, the amount of $70,000 this year. It was a smaller amount that was available, but the amount total, I think, was about $200,000, and it was split between the senior center and the city of North Bend for the basically a crossing, mid-block crossing on Park Street is what it is. And on it was in 4 years we've gotten 2 grants, and we hadn't gotten grants for many years before that. And thankfully, the meetings we go to are no longer being held at the Renton Sewer Treatment Plant. They are they're at the elections office instead, so. Interesting. And there's on October 30th from 6:30 to 8:30, King County Flood District is providing an update on the Middle Fork Corridor Plan. It might be interesting for those of us, like Mr. Garcia, talk about flooding. These are the folks that make those kinds of decisions, so. Anyway, council, Thursday night, but also, will you check your calendars to be for availability for Tuesday, January 29th? Like to do a retreat on that night or that day? It's an off Tuesday that we wouldn't normally have a meeting, so if we could do that day, that'd be fabulous. Schedule a retreat, so check your calendars. And with that, we're gonna go into executive session to talk about potential litigation pursuant to RCW 42.30.110, paragraph 1I, and real estate acquisition pursuant to RCW 42.30.110, paragraph 1B. And we will be about 40 minutes, 30 minutes?
I think we can do it in 30 minutes.
30 minutes, and there will be there'll be no action taken afterwards, so the taping will cease as you folks leave. So, thank you very much for coming.
Man, I didn't do a very good job reading my packet today.